It was a bitterly cold morning in the city. The kind of morning when people hurried along the sidewalks, their breath visible in the frozen air, their hands buried deep in their coats. On the corner of a busy street stood a boy, no older than 12. His shoes were worn thin, the soles flapping slightly as he shifted his weight from one foot to the other. His coat was too small for him, clearly meant for a much younger child, and in his hands, he held a small basket. Inside were only a handful of pastries, stale, unevenly shaped, wrapped carefully in wax paper. The boy's name was Daniel. Each morning before school, he would wake up before dawn, light a tiny stove in the single-room apartment he shared with his sick mother, and bake whatever he could from the cheapest ingredients they could afford. Flour, sugar, sometimes a little jam if he was lucky. Then, after making sure his mother had water by her bedside, he would run out to the street, hoping that passers-by might buy just one pastry, enough to pay for her medicine that day. But most people ignored him. Some frowned at him, others waved him away. He wasn't a professional baker. His pastries were misshapen, uneven, sometimes burnt at the edges. And Daniel's shy voice didn't help him stand out among the noisy vendors on the corner. Still, he tried. With eyes full of hope, he whispered to one man in a suit. "Can I sell you a pastry, sir?" The man looked at him, shook his head, and kept walking. Another lady, rushing with her coffee, muttered, "No, thanks." Daniel lowered his head. He wanted to cry, but he had promised his mother he would be strong. Just one pastry, he thought. If I can sell just one, maybe I can buy her medicine today. Hours passed, and no one stopped. His little fingers turned red from the cold, but he refused to give up. Then, as the sun began to rise higher, a black car pulled up to the curb. The door opened, and out stepped a tall man in a long coat. His shoes were polished, his scarf thick and warm, and his presence seemed to command attention. People turned their heads. He was obviously someone important. Daniel swallowed hard and took a shaky breath. He clutched his basket and stepped forward. Can I sell you a pastry, sir?" The man stopped. He looked down at Daniel, his brow furrowing. Unlike the others, he didn't wave him off. He studied the boy carefully, the trembling hands, the patched coat, the quiet desperation in his eyes. "What did you say?" the man asked. His voice was deep, calm, but with a sharpness that made Daniel hesitate. I baked them myself, sir," Daniel whispered, holding up the basket. "Just one pastry, please. They're only 50 cents. The man reached out and picked up one of the pastries. He held it carefully, as though it were something precious. Then he took a bite. His face didn't change, no smile, no frown. Daniel waited, his heart pounding. Finally, the man asked, "Do you bake these every day?" Daniel nodded quickly. "Yes, sir. I make them for my mother. She's sick, and I need to buy her medicine." The man stood in silence, still chewing. Something softened in his eyes, though he tried to hide it. He looked down at the boy again and asked, "And after you sell them, do you go to school?" Daniel lowered his head. "Not every day. Sometimes I can't. Sometimes I have to take care of Mama." There was a long pause. The street around them seemed to go quiet, though people were still rushing past. The man reached into his pocket, pulled out a bill far larger than the price of the pastries, and placed it in Daniel's tiny hand. "Keep the change," he said. Daniel's eyes widened. But, sir, I can't, it's too much." "Take it," the man replied firmly. But as Daniel looked up, he saw something unexpected. The man wasn't simply giving him money out of pity. His gaze was steady, filled with thought, almost as though he was seeing something more, something hidden inside the boy. "Where's your mother?" the man asked suddenly. Daniel hesitated. "At home. She can't walk much." "Why?" The man didn't answer. Instead, he bent down so he was eye level with Daniel. "Son, from today, you're not going to sell pastries on the street anymore." Daniel blinked, confused. "But, if I don't, how will we eat?" The man's expression softened. His voice grew quieter, almost tender. "You're going to live with me." Daniel froze. He didn't understand. Live with him. What did that mean? This man was a stranger. And yet, there was something in his tone, something steady and kind, that felt safe. "Sir, I don't understand," Daniel stammered. The man smiled faintly. "I didn't introduce myself. My name is Jonathan Crane. People call me a businessman, some call me a millionaire. None of that matters. What matters is, no child should have to carry the weight you're carrying. From this moment on, I'll take care of you and your mother." Both of you will come live in my house. You'll have food, warmth, and the chance to go to school like every other child. You'll never stand out here in the cold again. Daniel's lips trembled. He wanted to believe him, but it sounded impossible. People didn't just offer such things. For years, it had been just him and his mother against the world. But Jonathan's eyes, they didn't look like the eyes of someone making a false promise. They looked like the eyes of someone who meant every word. Daniel burst into tears. For the first time in a long time, he let himself cry. Not out of fear, not out of hunger, but out of relief. Jonathan gently placed a hand on his shoulder. Come on, son, let's bring those pastries to your mother. That evening, Jonathan kept his word. He visited the small apartment, met Daniel's frail mother, and without hesitation arranged for doctors to care for her. Within weeks, she began to recover, her cheeks no longer pale, her voice no longer weak. And Daniel, he finally went to school, not as a boy with a basket of stale pastries, but as a child with a future. Years later, Daniel would look back on that cold morning as the day everything changed. The day a stranger didn't just buy a pastry, he bought them a new life. And Jonathan Crane, the man everyone knew as a millionaire, became something far greater in Daniel's heart. He became a father. Because sometimes, the greatest wealth isn't measured in money at all. It's measured in kindness, in love, and in the courage to see the invisible struggles of another soul. So if you ever find yourself rushing past someone in need, pause for just a moment. You may not have the fortune of a millionaire, but even a single act of kindness can change someone's world. And who knows, maybe one day, that someone will tell your story.